You said recording was in progress. Okay. Thank you. Okay, it is 1 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. We have a quorum. All 5 directors are present. So next is the president's report. I've been asked by a few people to give a little bit of an update on the recruitment process. I just wanted to let you know that the recruitment agent that we hired has now interviewed all of the directors and key staff and is creating a profile now and is getting ready to start interviewing. So things are starting to move along. And we'll try to keep you updated as we know something. As you know, we've got a big storm coming, and I think our general manager and Chief Vincent has some information for us on the storm. GM D'Enzo, would it be okay if Chief Vincent speaks?
Thank you, Madam President, Board of Directors, community. Cambria is expected to be impacted fairly significantly by the upcoming weather event. The county as a whole is expected to receive anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain starting this afternoon through Saturday. The Rocky Butte area is expected to potentially receive 4 to 8 inches of rain, having a direct flooding impact on Cambria. Additionally, the San Lucia Mountains above Cambria could see 15 inches of rain in the same time period, also having a major impact on Cambria. Cambrians can expect 10 to 20 mile per hour winds with gusts between 20 and 40 miles per hour. Localized flooding is expected. If you live in an area that normally floods, it is anticipated that this weather event will cause those areas to flood again. The incoming weather event has placed Cambria under a flood advisory from Thursday afternoon to Saturday morning. Based upon the current Santa Rosa Creek levels and anticipated precipitation amounts, there is a very high probability that the Windsor Boulevard Bridge area will flood again and cut off access to and from Park Hill neighborhood during this incoming storm event. The Cambria Fire Department will be opening the emergency fire access road as long as the road remains passable. The last storm did significant damage to the emergency road, and if the storm does more damage to the road, we may have to restrict use and access to the road for emergency vehicles only. If you live in the Park Hill neighborhood, right now is the time to prepare. Ensure that you have adequate medication, food, and water for yourself, your family, and your pets. The emergency road is not built for vehicle traffic. It is only for emergency vehicle access and evacuations. Please do not try to treat this emergency access road as a viable roadway to travel to and from Park Hill. If the conditions worsen on this emergency road, this too will be closed. For access to that location, the Park Hill Fire Access Road location on the eastern side is in front of 2760 Marlboro Lane. On the western side, the Park Hill side, the access is in front of 462 Windsor Boulevard. It is anticipated that the west end of Main Street will again see some substantial flooding. I made contact with County Public Works crews servicing the pump station at the west end of Main Street yesterday. I was informed that the pump has been switched to automatically turn on via a float mechanism in anticipation of the incoming storm. The County Public Works Department will be notified as soon as the pump turns on and will be dispatching someone to Cambria to stay on site to monitor the pump. The pump is capable of moving 3,000 gallons per minute and dumps all the water directly into the Santa Rosa Creek. If the creek levels rise too high, the effectiveness of the pump will be reduced, resulting in increased flooding along Main Street. For any questions on the pump system, you can contact the San Luis Obispo County Public Works Department at 805-781-5252. Another storm system is coming and is forecast to produce an additional 2 to 4 inches of rain on Tuesday and into Wednesday this next week. We will continue to monitor these weather patterns and keep the community informed. So my personal message to the public, please make sure that you and your family have adequate supplies to potentially shelter in place if the storm causes a power outage. If you can avoid driving on the roadways during the storm, please do so to lower your risk of being caught in a flash flood or a vehicle accident. With several trees anticipated to fall around the community, the safest actions we can all take is to shelter in place to allow the emergency responders to work around the community with unimpeded access to keep the hazards mitigated. If your Cambria CSD Fire Department, just so you know, your Cambria CSD Fire Department will be upstaffed with an additional fire engine, and I myself will also be here in Cambria for the next 48 hours to make sure that we are available 24/7 to mitigate any and all emergencies that happen within Cambria. To keep all of the Cambrians safe during this weather event, please stay home. Please stay off the roadways. Go to the store now, get any supplies that you may need. Make sure you have your medication. Make sure your furry friends, your cats and your dogs have food. And let's ride this out at home. If we can stay off the roadways, it's going to allow us to do our jobs to keep Cambria safer. And I believe together we can all make it through this storm just as we did in January with no storm-related accidents, injuries, and or deaths. And that is our goal from the public safety standpoint as Cambria CSD's fire department. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to the board with any questions.
Thank you, Chief Vincent. This is part of the president's report, but I'm going to go ahead and let questions anyway.
Okay.
Go ahead and Vice.
Yeah, thank you, President Dean. Yeah, thank you for the report, Chief. It was very, very thorough and I think very appropriately cautionary. I just wanted to clarify one point because as you might know, a Parker resident asked me about this in relation to the last storm event where Windsor Boulevard was out of commission. It sounds like what you're saying is that travel on the fire road or the escape road across the ranch is strongly discouraged. However, if you have to go, it is open in both directions. Is that true?
We will be trying to keep this open in both directions while monitoring the condition of the road.
Okay.
Just as I drove the road yesterday, I could, in a Ford F-250, I could not go over 5 miles per hour because of the condition of the road is so poor right now. And if we have additional traffic on that, I'm anticipating that it's going to quickly turn into exit only, and then it's going to turn into emergency vehicles only. So
travel strongly discouraged.
Very, very strongly discouraged. This is an emergency road. It is not a viable travel path for the community in case of Windsor Boulevard being shut down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Farmer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chief. Just as Vice President Gray said, for a very thorough report and expressing serious concern about what's on the horizon. I just want to make a couple of brief corrections, and my apologies for this. But when you were saying with regard to the east and west, with regard to on the each side of the ranch and Windsor, it's actually, I believe one would say north and south, like Marine Terrace is south, and then Park Hill is north. But also, you said that the address at the north entrance was 462 Windsor. It's actually 4620. So just to let you know that. Not a big deal, but I mean, you don't live here, so you wouldn't necessarily know these things, but there you are. And thank you again, okay?
You're very welcome. And yes, I had 4620, but I believe maybe I said 462. So
yeah, it's understandable. You're probably nervous making that report.
You make me very nervous, Director.
Okay. thank you very much for that report. Thank you. And you're recommending everybody go get supplies ahead of time. And I did do that this morning. And I have to tell you, that's one of the busiest I've ever seen the cookie crock. So people read your warning on social media. So.
If I can just add one thing, the last time we had the storm, our water levels in the Santa Rosa Creek were much lower than they are now, and we're expecting more water than that. Our peak time for this storm, or we're going to see our heaviest precipitation, is tomorrow morning between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. That is also when we have high tide. So again, we are anticipating that when those factors come together, we're going to have flooding, and we're also anticipating in the countywide phone call that we're going to potentially have a shutdown of Highway 1 north of us and Highway 1 south of us. And if we have a landslide on 46 with all of the moisture, we will be an island. And so it may take some time for PG&E to make it out here for to turn power back on, and if we do lose power. So again, I don't want to say the sky is falling, but it kind of is. So through the water. So just please be prepared.
Okay, if I may ask one more question. Has anyone checked to see if we have unhoused community members camping along the rivers where they will be in danger?
Our facilities and resource manager has a great relation with them, and I know he has, and I believe he's continuing to work to make sure that they know that there's going to be some rise, and I will confirm that again. But when I spoke to him yesterday, it was something that was briefly discussed, and I believe they've been informed and probably will need to be re-informed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, agenda review. Oh, I'm sorry. Haley.
I have a member of the public that wishes to speak. So, but Ray, I think, wants to say something.
Oh, I also wanted to add, just as also a precautionary measure, our admin staff will be working remotely on Friday. We will still be responding to calls, answering phones. Our utility staff for water and wastewater will be on site, and we actually have extra on-call people as well to handle emergencies. And I'm also assuming that it's okay for us to get your packets out on Monday.
Yes.
So, okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Dodson.
Tina Dickinson.
Ms. Dickinson.
Yes, thank you, Haley. Thank you, President Dean. First of all, President Dean, I'm not hearing you at all well via Zoom. Maybe if your microphone could be closer to you, or because I can barely hear you. But I would, this question through you directed to the fire chief. I know this is a very good informational report, and I appreciate it, but I would certainly appreciate if this town could get some sandbags, have them available. And every city I've looked at, every town have them available. Why don't we have them for folks to prevent an event at their own home? We really need them. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have sand piles, and sandbags are available at the hardware store. Is that okay? Thank you. Agenda review. I am going to pull agenda item 5B, and this is the item on the water meters, so that our staff can go back and get further RFPs and some more information on this, unless anybody has an objection to me pulling that. No.
And President, if I could
Yes.
we move 5D up the agenda, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, board member communications. Does anybody on the board have anything that they wish to make an announcement on, report briefly on his or her activities, or ask a question for clarification? And I do think directors Scott and Thomas would like to make a brief statement about their experience at the SDLA. So Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Dean. Is audio okay? I know it's often. Thanks. It was a great opportunity to attend the Special District Leadership Academy, and the amount of information we learned is Well, it's a bit like a drink of water from the fire hose, but it was excellent. And I got my report to Haley a couple of days after the deadline, because at that point we were just getting our certificates and heading out of town. But just a couple of points that were noteworthy. On the board, it's okay to disagree. It's not important that votes be unanimous, but after the vote is taken, it's essential that every board member, one, be able to explain the basis upon which that decision was made and support that decision through execution. And the discussions about dialogue, great information, recognizing that others have information and perspectives that are essential to every decision we make. That we need to ask questions, really listen, seek first to understand before we go towards the decision making. Share assumptions, information, reasoning, identify common ground, areas of agreement and disagreement, reframe issues when appropriate, and look for alternatives that address all perspectives. And even when we disagree, respect and value others' perspectives. And and listen to and value public input, regardless of how that input is communicated. And while it's pleasant, it may be pleasant to hear when those comments align with our beliefs and concerns, I think we often learn more from listening close to those with whom we disagree. So, right. So that's a couple of the key insights. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Director Scott. Great, and I'm glad you both were willing to go. I felt it was a wonderful experience, very valuable when I went the last time. So I'm glad you enjoyed it and learned something from it. So I believe you had your light on for a minute, Director Farmer. Did you have something you wanted to say?
I neglected to turn it off from my previous comment. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we're ready for the Pros Commission report. Mr. Niffen.
So here's my report. One sentence: do not let the perfect become the enemy of the good. That's my report. I'll take any questions. And I'm serious. We've got to get this grant. If you think it's not perfect, that's fine, but it's good and we got to get it. Thank you.
Okay, do any of the directors have any questions for Mr. Niffen? Is there any public comment on Mr. Niffen's report?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Steve, I'd just like to know what drugs you're on, and if you can pass any of them on to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, it was just,
not here.
It was a joke.
Yeah. But we're doing good. The Frisbee thing is on. They've got their things going on Saturday. That information's out there. Everything I would have to say would probably be redundant. I feel like we're in a good spot. So the grant is what's on the agenda. You guys know what's up with that. And so we got to go. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anybody in the audience have any public comment on what Mr. Niffen had to say? No? Oh, I'm sorry.
Is this out of the line of sight? I need.
Yeah, the umbrella kind of blocked it a little bit, but you're fine. Director Thomas.
Oh, thanks. And Steve, I wasn't able to attend in person, but I did listen afterwards, and what great dialogue at the meeting.
Yeah, well, I love those meetings just for that reason, because we don't really follow Robert's Rules of Order. It's more of a community discussion. We talk about things. And I'll say it here now that I'm here talking. It's like, okay, we're talking about Frisbee golf, but where do the things go? And what do they really look like? And who makes that decision? They keep saying, oh, the board. And I keep thinking, we're going to go to the board and ask the board, you guys, where we're going to put the Frisbee golf things in the ground. I think it's probably Carlos, but that was part of the larger discussion, and Kitty's in the discussion. The FFR people are in it. They want to make sure that it follows all the rules and regulations. So it was a great discussion, and we're not done with it, but we're definitely in a good spot moving forward.
Why don't you bring us a drawing of where you think they ought to go?
They're not there. That is what they're working on right now.
Okay.
And that was the discussion, right? We don't want to see them really. We want to put them off to the side, but we can't be in the ESHA, and we can't be off the 130 acres that's defined as the park. We can't be down past, closer to the highway. And anyway, I was going to try to have a short conversation, but it's fun. If you're into that conversation, come to either the Saturday meetings where they're really getting into the nuts and bolts of those projects, or even the pros meeting where we kind of have larger issues. But yeah, everybody's welcome. And now we're in person again too. So it is kind of fun.
Okay, great.
Super.
Thank you. Director Farmer.
Well, since Steve was mentioning the gathering that we have, it's on sometimes it's been every other Saturday at the Chamber of Commerce office at 9 a.m. The next one is going to be on April 1st. I just want to make a comment because some people might not be that familiar with Frisbee golf. I wasn't until it was presented to us by one of the folks involved with what's going to be happening on the East Ranch. So for the past 5 weeks, with the exception of 1 week, where it was raining, a number of us have been out collecting signatures at the farmers market. And so last Friday, which is going to be our last time at the market, I happened to be walking to the back entrance to the market and ran across 4 gentlemen that live here in Cambria standing in the parking lot. And one of them I knew. So I just walked up and said, gentlemen, I have this signature form here, and would you be interested in signing it? And it's about what's going to be happening on the East Ranch. And I mentioned one of them was Frisbee golf. Well, it just so happened that one of the folks that was there in that group of 4 was the first winner of the worldwide Frisbee golf championship competition. And I'm thinking, well, I think this is an omen that we should be having Frisbee golf out on the East Ranch. And he attended the meeting that we had the next day at the Chamber of Commerce and wants to participate, help design the Frisbee golf course. And he's still involved. And this is like 45 years later. So I just thought that was very serendipitous happening. And it's kind of cool to just relay that story. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Okay, now we're ready for public comment on items not on the agenda. Members of the public may address the board on any item of interest within the jurisdiction of the board, but not on its agenda today. President Diamond from San Simeon CSD.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'm the new chairperson for the San Simeon Community Service District. And I wanted to take this opportunity to express the thanks from our community for allowing us to use your facilities in the future. We were put into a bind. We had no place to hold our meetings. We have to have an ADA compliant place, and that was really not available to us. So I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to meet here. And I hope it will be something that we can work out long-term because it is close to our community and we don't really have any other opportunities in our community right now. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. And it was nice to meet you in person. I've only seen you as a little square on the screen.
I know. It's nice to meet all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as Diane, I'm sorry, allow myself to be recognized here. So thank you for coming to our board meeting, since we rarely see someone from San Simeon. So it sounds like what you're saying is the San Simeon CSD meetings will be happening here at our Veterans Hall?
Yes,
In the side room, I'm assuming, right?
in the side room, yes.
Right. So you might want to mention to folks that are out there listening that might be interested in attending, since it's right here in town, when your meetings are, what day and time?
They are the first Tuesday of every month, and they start at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m.
All right. Well, thank you. It's really a pleasure to meet you.
Same here. Oh.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
Hello, Ms. Chairperson. I am Deborah Scott.
Nice.
I am the Cambria liaison to San Simeon CSD, so it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to speak? Ms. Heinrichs, you put in a speaker slip for 5B, and I tabled 5B to a future time. So do you still want to speak on that? If you do, this would be the time. No? Okay. I just wanted to give you the opportunity. Director Thomas?
Also, Crosby Schwartz had a comment written, I believe for 5B, and he may want to read that. So
Is Mr. Schwartz on Zoom?
Yes, and he actually has his hand raised, and then I have 2 comments to read.
Okay.
Good afternoon, President Dean and members of the board. I have a general comment about the water meter situation that I'd like you to take into account as you move forward with this project. A couple of questions. First of all, what is the expected service life of the Neptune water meters? Or if you decide to go with another meter, of course, the same question applies. Will the meters use internal or external antennas? Will the external antennas be visible or accessible to the customer? What is the radio frequency transmitter power of the meters? How long will it take to install the new meters? And you separately time out residential versus commercial meter installations. And finally, some of this meter replacement project should be on a pay-as-you-go basis. If the purchase and installation of the meters can be scheduled over more than one fiscal year budget, less financing and interest cost will be needed. Thank you for your consideration in response to my comments. And Laura has a separate comment to make, if you would allow that at this point.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, President Dean, staff, and rest of the board. First thing I wanted to say is, Deborah, we cannot hear you out here in Zoom world. And Harry's microphone's a little sketchy also, but we could not hear a word from Deborah Scott. So maybe, because we'd like to hear her. Okay. Anyhow.
Thank you. AGP is looking at her microphone right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is my comment. And this pertains to the water meters a little bit, but this is a general statement. So anyhow, excuse me, Laura Schwartz, Cambria ratepayer since 2008. And as you know, I'm a numbers person. Okay. Last year, when we were dealing with the new wastewater disposal contract, numerical errors were brought to the district's attention. And then you and the whole staff thanked me profusely. So as I said, I'm a numbers person. Okay. A somewhat different board of directors this year, but I'd like to mention a financial trend that in the past and currently is very disturbing to me. Sometimes necessary, sometimes not. The amount of borrowing or financing is just excessive in my opinion. Okay. I need to put my glasses on, excuse me. Has anyone totaled up the amount of interest this district, that means we the ratepayers, suffer through yearly? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably approaching $1 million by now. How much interest do we pay a year? These many dollars could be spent on necessary infrastructure, not bankers. Please attempt to slowly turn this ship around and pay more as we go. Please, in the big picture, be more cost conscious and use methods. There's all kinds of creative ways that I can't say in 3 minutes to use our rate increases wisely to improve our lives and not give it away. This would be one of the ways to keep our district solvent. Please consider this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do we have more public comment, Haley?
Well, but I do have 2 written comments to read.
Okay.
The first one is from Linda Prentice. Please consider allowing 50 water meter holders to build each year for 2 years to test the effect on the water supplies. Thank you. The second comment is from Holly Ludwigson. I would like to request that the acting general manager of CCSD annually review the existing social media policy 2415 approved by CCSD on September 16, 2021, with members of all standing committees. The social media policy outlines approved guidelines regarding commenting and posting on social media sites about CCSD business by director or district employees and district officials, as well as consultants and contractors performing work on behalf of the district as stated in the policy's purpose. I feel a formal annual review of the existing social media policy with members of standing committees is warranted based on posts and comments containing misinformation and unsupported allegations that show up on Nextdoor and local Facebook sites by some standing committee members. 2 examples come to mind. Misinformation by a finance committee member about components of the most recent Prop 218 and the recent accusation by a policy committee member that CCSD is influencing community members' trash bin choices in order for CCSD to benefit financially. In the interest of CCSD board transparency and greater community involvement, I cannot understand how standing committee members' incorrect social media posts and comments could be anything but harmful to community members' understanding of current CCSD concerns and projects, besides being in violation of the CCSD policy on social media communications. I recognize how it is to speak from an unofficial position, having insider information, but sharing misunderstood, prejudice, and incorrect information on social media sites is dangerous. Since the current and approved CCSD social media policy appears to be consistently observed by the board members, but not by all committee members, an annual review of the policy with standing committee members could be beneficial. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
I do have another member of the public that wishes to speak on Zoom.
Okay.
Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Go ahead, Dr. Bentonhausen.
Yes, I just want to say that it's impossible to understand what was just read by, I assume by Ms. Dodson. I suggest that you take a break and get these microphones fixed because they seem to be not serving your purposes. Thank you.
AGP, we've had several members of the public now saying they're having difficulty hearing us on Zoom. Is there a way to correct that?
I've been checking as we go along. There are a few things that we're adjusting as we go forward. I can hear everything perfectly clearly through the stream. I'm unsure as to why Zoom is having an issue. We could take an additional 15 minutes just to verify everything. Might be a good idea.
Okay, well, how far into the meeting are we? About an hour and a half already? Okay. Sorry, I can't quite see the clock. I think it's important that the public be able to hear us. So if everybody doesn't mind, let's go ahead and take a brief break so that the volume of the Zoom can be corrected. Hank, did you have something you wanted to? Okay. Oh, goodbye. Okay, let's go ahead and take I think he said he needed 15 minutes, if that's all right. Okay.
Testing, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2, nothing?
Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2.
Only getting. Yeah. Okay, now I hear myself. That's it. That's it. Now I can hear this. What did you do? Okay. Now I can hear myself on this. Yeah, try that, please.
Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing, testing, testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
Test. Much better.
Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
Yeah, please. Oh. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Bring the trim down on the one I'm talking on right now.
He's at Harry's.
Yeah, you see it now? Okay, bring it down. Bring it down. Right there. That's nice and clean.
Testing 1, 2. 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 Testing 1, 2.
Bring the trim down.
Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Still coming in fuzzy.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Here, tap the mic a few times. Okay.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
He's still blown out. Bring it down a little more.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Sounds robotic now. move this away from my power can affect it. Right now?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Still fuzzy. Could be the microphone.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. 7 years ago. I guess so. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3. 3, 4. 3, 4. 5, 6, 7. 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Last test for Haley's mic, testing 1, 2. Finance manager's mic, testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3. I know. Okay, like this? Okay, great.
Karen, we're ready whenever you guys are. And I do have a member of the public that wishes to speak too on public comment. So whenever you're ready, I can bring them in.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. Ms. Dotson, you have another public comment on items not on the agenda?
Yes, Tina Dickinson.
Thank you, Haley. Thank you, President Dean. I would like to thank Director Michael Thomas for taking a call from me. I think it was almost a week ago, last Friday night. I spoke to him about my concerns that there was only one RFP for water meters, new water meters. And he listened, and then I find out today that it's been pulled from the agenda. So I'm really pleased that there will be the possibility of hopefully maybe 3 RFPs. There's some background noise, and I don't know what the problem is there. As I'm speaking, there's background noise. And I would also like to thank Ms. Diamond, the president of the San Simeon Community Services District, for informing the Cambria community that the San Simeon CSD may be using the Vets Hall for their meetings. I would like to know when this arrangement was made and approved by the board, and what is involved with that arrangement. As far as I know, this has never been brought to the CSD, Cambria CSD. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Mr. D'Anzo, do you want to respond to any of that?
No, I won't respond at this point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Director Farmer.
Thank you. Since we've had 2 members of the community communicating with us via Zoom in the last 10, 15 minutes or so, I wonder if Haley could inform us as to how many folks are out there in Zoom land right now.
I've been keeping a running list during the meeting, so I could give you that list that includes everyone that's attended since 1, or I can give you the list of 8 right now. What would you like?
Whatever you're comfortable with, or both.
I can give you the entire list.
Okay.
Cheryl McDowell, Crosby and Laura Swartz, Don Howell, Jim Green, Steve Desper, Tina Dickinson, Christina Galloway, Julie Amadei, Kayla, Elizabeth Benhausen, Jeff Wilson, and Candy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. If there's no more public comment, is there any more public comment, Ms. Dodson?
Not in Zoom, but let me check my email. No, I have no more.
Okay. If I can ask the last speaker, if it's possible, if they can hear us okay now that the microphones have been adjusted.
Sure, I'll bring in Elizabeth since she was having issues hearing us. Elizabeth, can you hear us? Tina, can you hear us?
I'd like to hear Director Scott, because we could not hear her at all. And I'd like to see if her microphone is working through Zoom, and Director Farmer.
Okay, let's go ahead and test that.
Hi, Tina. This is Deborah. Can you
It's
hear me?
working perfectly.
Okay, Director Farmer.
Hello there.
Director Farmer, there's a problem. It's not clear. Either you need to get closer to the microphone or bring it down or whatever. It's not clear.
How's this, Ms. Dickinson?
It's better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like we're working okay now. Okay, regular business. We're going to go ahead and move to agenda item 5D since we changed the order. And this is to receive and file the independent auditor's report for fiscal year 2021-22 and internal control letter. And Mr. D'Anzo, do you want to go ahead and introduce this item?
Yes, yes, President Dean. So staff recommends that the board receive and file the attached independent auditor's report and financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2022, and an internal control letter presented by Moss, Levy, and Hartson LLP. The auditor is also available and will present, but Pam Duffield, our administrative department manager, also has some opening comments relating to this topic.
Pam, please.
Okay, Ms. Duffield?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, President Dean and members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to introduce Mr. Hom from Moss Levy. So as you're aware, Moss Levy has been performing the district's audits. This will be the 4th year that they have done that. They have helped us immensely get caught up in all of our audits, as there were a couple of years where we were behind. So
Ms. Duffield, can you
yes.
hold just a second? Your volume went down. We can't hear you. Hold on. 1 minute.
AGP, can you? Thank you.
Are we okay? Okay, go ahead.
Justine?
Sorry.
Justine, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So sorry. So yes, Moss Levy and Hartzheim, this is the 4th audit that they have done for the district. They began audit services for us back in fiscal year 18-19. And then this current one, 21-22, is their 4th. Mr. Alex Hom from their agency is the head auditor. And he is on Zoom as well and ready to give a presentation to the board on what they did during the audit, and also this letter that was attached for the board, which is a new addition to the audit process this fiscal year. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Hom for his report.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hahn.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect. Again, my name is Alex from Moss Levy and Hartzheim. I'm glad that we gave the district an unmodified clean opinion. And there's only a few things of note in terms of the changes of how the financial statements look. The first one is the opinion letter changed quite a bit. It changed to the point of just kind of how it's how the wording is. But in pretty much it's essentially the same kind. It's supposed to be easier for the reader. And another thing of note in the financial statements, the net pension liability dropped quite considerably. And I've been telling a lot of districts and cities, pretty much that's just all kind of misleading, because for one, the numbers for net pension liability are a year behind based on what PERS gives you. So these numbers are based off of June 30, 2021 from PERS. And if you remember how the stock market was in general around that time frame, the stock market was doing really, really well. So thus PERS's investments were doing really, really well. So thus the liability on the PERS side of things, they had less liability because their investments were higher. And if you remember June 30, 2022, the stock market pretty much dove off a cliff. So next year's numbers is probably going to go pretty much probably to where it was, or if not a lot higher because of how the market was around that time. Other than that, it was pretty much status quo. Does the board have any questions regarding the audit or the audit process in general?
Okay, do the directors have any question, Director Thomas?
Well, sure. I've got several questions, not out of any express concern, but just questions of due diligence that we should hear. President Dean, I assume you'll want me to kind of read these questions one at a time rather than later on.
If that's okay, Mr. Hahn, you want to answer his questions one at a time?
Sure.
Okay.
So first, do you have any recommendations that for any changes that we should make regarding oversight?
In terms of oversight, like the controls and process right now, and that's the whole point of the internal control letter, is that there was nothing kind of glaring in terms of how the controls are. And in terms of the processes, we didn't find any kind of issues or kind of glaring holes per se.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was clear from the clean report. There's no glaring. Just looking for ideas. And how do our internal controls compare with you've audited many organizations. So how do our internal controls compare in terms of, and likewise with, our level of reserves, the debt question that we heard a few minutes ago, pension and OPEB, just the concept of how do we compare, how do we stand in those aspects?
Okay, so in terms of controls for a district your size, in terms of the financial side of the department, like you're doing the best that you can with the number of staff you have. So like in terms of, you're not a city that has like an accounting department of like 5 to 6 people. So like you're making do with what you got, and for what you got, you guys are doing pretty good. And then in terms of the reserves, like in terms of comparables, like I would say on average, kind of. In terms of debt, like granted, because it's I've seen more because of you have to deal with vehicles, you have the rolling stock of vehicles and everything like that, and having the plant, like it's kind of where you're normally at, like that's probably the best way to put it. And then so was that was there another part for that question in terms of comparing to debt? The liability, net pension liability is probably on par with everything else. Like, and again, that's just all kind of, it varies depending on the current size of the district, because a lot of it is based on pretty much the number of employees you have in PERS and everything like that. And in terms of, it's kind of a weird point in time now in terms of debt, because you're seeing a lot more districts, trying to expand their plant or making upgrades, because a lot of this stuff right now is so as of right now probably like lower, but because it's really much the landscape of how everything else around the, like what I've seen. So I hope that answers that question.
No, that's great insights. Thank you. And especially, I mean, considering what I understand is we're required to change auditors every 5 years, I believe. So, the fact that you've got this much experience, you're such a valuable partner. So it's good to learn all we can. So, and I guess the other question is, it's 9 months out since the end of the fiscal year, and we're obviously well within the 12-month requirement, but do you have suggestions for how we might shorten the time frame and end up done perhaps in the same calendar year as the fiscal year ends?
It all depends, because like there was a lot of monkey wrenches during the last like 2 years, because COVID, and then you also had the switch into the Tyler, and then once it takes a bit of time to get used to the new system, and then get used to any glitches that pop up, and then having to fix it, and then it's over time, especially with how the new accounting system works, like over time, once more experience and you get more of a routine with the system, it's easier to get it within a calendar year, or like within the early part before before January. Usually most people try to get their audit done by December, January-ish. So as more experience in this, because I think you guys are just on this is like year 3, technically year 2 with everything in Tyler. So yeah, so again, more experience on it will probably get the closeout faster though.
Oh, great insights. And last comment is, I just wanted to comment the management discussion and analysis, the 8 pages or so, so well done. I had to read them several times, and I'm still working on fully understanding. I think we'll have to have a class, but to Pam and Denise, that is so useful. So thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the other directors have a question for Mr. Hahn? Director Farmer?
I don't necessarily have a question. I just want to affirm how important Moss Levy was in entering the picture and assisting the district when our, let's just say, previous experience with regard to having the yearly audit done was a bit problematic. So just 2 thumbs up for you folks. And I know Ms. Duffield feels exactly the same way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Scott?
Yes, Madam President. Sounds like to me that you and the staff worked well together. Is that the case?
I would definitely say so. Pam has been nothing but kind to me since we started. So, and then she's worked extremely hard to get you guys up to speed on a lot of things. So kudos to Pam.
Thank you.
And I have to agree that we need to thank Ms. Duffield for her expertise for getting this district straightened out over the years that she's been with us, and with Ms. Fritz for her work with us as well. We have good financial people here. Ms. Duffield, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss with the audit?
Yes, if I may. So I just want to let the board know as well that when the district hired Moss, Levy, and Hartzheim, we hired them outside of the normal audit schedule. So generally, the audit schedule falls somewhere in August, September, October, November, those months, to complete things prior to March to June, so that everybody is in compliance with their statutory audit requirements. So we had one period where I think we completed, 3 separate audits in one calendar year. And so that's saying a lot for our auditors working with us outside the normal schedule. You know, this is the time of year, you know, once January, February hits, and March, they're into the tax season. So having to work on our audits outside the normal schedule, they really worked hard to work with us. So, you know, yes, things may have taken a couple of months longer than normally they would. But again, we were outside those normal schedules to get caught up. So I just kind of wanted to let the board be aware of that. And then also, Director Thomas had a question talking about preparing for the audit. So first and foremost, we have to wait until the fiscal year closes. And so that is sometime the end of July. The end of July and August are extremely busy in the finance world, because we have tax roll that has to be submitted to the county. We have the final audit, the final budget that's presented to the finance committee and also the board by the end of August. So because we are such a small staff, last year we didn't have a payroll person at the time that was all happening. So to give us a good 2 months once the year closes and all those other deadlines are met to work and be prepared for the auditors to be on site, you know, we weren't ready for that until November. That's likely going to be the case again next year because, you know, we continue to be short-staffed. So I just kind of wanted to paint that timeline out to the board. It's not like we're lagging or trying to lag. It's just we don't have the staff to accomplish what we need to accomplish to get ready for the auditors, because we don't want the auditors to come on site and be sitting there waiting for us to present them data. We want to have everything prepared so that they can move quickly through their process and not have to sit and wait on us. So hopefully that helps provide a little bit of perspective on the timing and what it kind of looks like for staff's preparation of the audit.
Thank you. You have your light on still.
President Dean, I just, in reflecting on what Harry said and how far this district has come in the last, well, since Pam's arrival here, I just wanted to request permission for a standing ovation.
Sure. I think she deserves
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that was to Alex as well, because they've done a great job for us.
Yes. Okay, does anyone have any additional questions for Ms. Duffield? No. Do we have any public comment on the audit?
I do not.
You do not. So this is a receive and file, and this is the first receive and file I've done as a board president. So what is the procedure here, Mr. D'Anzo?
I'm not sure. I think just if you can ask Mr. Carmel, yes.
No formal board action is necessary.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've received it, so I guess we can file it. Thank you. Okay, moving back to our schedule, we're going to go to agenda item 5A, and this is discussion and consideration of the strategic plan ad hoc committee report. Would you like to introduce this, Mr. D'Anzo?
Yes, item 5A is to discussion and consideration of strategic plan ad hoc committee report. Staff recommends that the board of directors discuss and consider monthly updates to the strategic plan. Carry it on.
Okay. Last month, we just basically adopted the strategic plan. And today, I want to go through each of the items and explain why some of this is in red and what that means. And a few of the changes that we did when we did the strategic plan this last time. If you go through this chart, you'll see that some of the type is in red. And the red indicates that there was a change in, for example, if you look at page 4, when you're looking at the core area of water services and you go down to item number 2, objective number 2, you'll see a red X under revised. And what that means is something in this particular objective has changed. And if you look over to the left-hand column, you see what has changed is the date. So anytime you see red, that's a change that happened over usually the last month because the GM updates the strategic plan progress every month for us. He checks with who's supposed to be doing what and verifies that they're on track. And anything that's changed in the progress, you will see in red at the next meeting. Okay. We had some very good input from our 2 new directors at the last strategic plan workshop. They pointed out to us that when you're looking at our objectives, the objectives we had were actually actions and not objectives. And so we rearranged quite a bit in this chart. And some of the action items that we had in here were reworded to become actually an objective. And then we created actions under those objectives to accomplish the objectives. And I thank both Director Thomas and Director Scott for recommending those changes because I think it makes this strategic plan make more sense. Okay. I want to just briefly go through the things that are in red, just to make sure with the general manager that and whoever's supposed to be doing these particular items that they're on track. So because the red items in here are the same red items that were in last month's agenda packet. So I just want to make sure we're still current. Okay, so under the goal of meeting ongoing challenges of effectively and reliably managing water resources in our sensitive ecosystem, it looks like the date for implementing the water meter replacement program has been revised to the March meeting, but since we tabled this today, what do you anticipate our timeline to be, Mr. Danzo?
So we are going to present this in April. So
April?
yeah, in the April 13th meeting.
Okay, so we can redo the when to April.
Is this appropriate time to ask a question?
Sure.
Is that, will there be opportunity to discuss with the RNI committee regarding the technical aspects and with the finance committee regarding the financing? Is it for input to the board and for public input?
If I'm correct, Mr. Dienzo, you will be bringing us the RFPs and then to the board, and the board can direct this to go to RNI and then to finance. Is that correct?
Well, I was thinking that we could present the plans and specs to the RNI on the April 10th meeting on its way to the April 13th. As far as the finance committee meeting, I think I'm not sure I could squeeze that in there in between now and April 13th though. So
Okay, but at the April 13th board meeting, after the RNI committee has reviewed this, if the board feels it needs to be reviewed by the finance committee, then we could probably refer it to them after that. Oh,
You answer first.
So one of the items we will bring before your board on April 13th is the plans and specifications for including the implementation and a lot of the details, which we are going to release the request for proposals from the different vendors. The other thing the second thing that we're also going to present to the board relating to the water meters project is the RFP for the installation. So obviously for that, we will need, we don't know exactly what that number is going to be when we get bids back from the contractors. What I do propose, what we could do is once we get those bids back, we will still need to go back to the board for approval, in which case there could be a budget adjustment that needs to be applied depending on the bids that we get back. I anticipate we will need that. And also the terms of the financing can also be presented to the board at that time as well. In which case we could have the finance committee review all of that prior to that future board meeting. I'm not sure exactly when that is going to happen, because all I know is right now, as far as this item is concerned, we will be presenting the implementation of the water meter project in April.
okay.
But as far as future steps relating to that, it depends on, the bids that we get back and such. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know we do have some money budgeted for the water meter, so I guess it does depend on what comes back. Director Gray.
Yeah, I was a question, I guess, President Dean, and this is before Acting General Manager Dienzo too. From the item actually was on today's agenda, the way it was stated, it seems like the sequence was going to be that we would talk about the implementation, and then it would the question of how to finance it, because you offered options, would go to finance committee and come back to the board. So that sounds like what you're describing now sounds like a similar sequence, just pushed back a month.
Exactly,
Yeah.
except that in this case, we would also present the different options, the different bids that we get back, how much those cost, and staff recommendation of who we should pick for that. And then also the RFPs for the construction as well. So, yeah.
Okay, Director Scott, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. It would be helpful for me. Well, the first question is the status when it says revised. It was really helpful to know that what's in red is what was revised. That was really helpful. Is there a way to have you speak to basically the tasks that are under each of the objectives on a regular basis? Because like you said, there's a lot of, it's about the same that we saw last month. What's going on is about the same, except for the changes. Like under number 2, it says April 2023, but I need to know what's happening with this under the objective. When we look at the tasks, what's happening with that? Because it keeps getting shoved later. So that would be important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, we do ask for an update on what the situation is anytime there is a change. If it's on track, then it should stay, the check mark should be under on target. So if it's on target, it's still in the process.
Right.
So if there's no red check mark
Yep.
in that area, it's still being worked on.
I
Does that
just
make
need
any
to
sense?
know what's happening.
Oh,
Because it's like, it just kind of sits there. And so it's helpful for me to know what's happening. Like, and we'll do this maybe a little bit later on, but the TAC meeting, I need to know where we are with that, because it just seems like it doesn't move.
okay. Well, the things like the TAC meeting, he normally goes through those with his engineer report. That's next week. So, okay.
Yeah.
Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Dean. I just also wanted to comment and thank Ray for, the energy. I can sense the priority you're giving to moving the meter replacement project forward. I appreciate that energy and also the flexibility. So even within this week, adapting to feedback. Well done, and I'm excited to see this coming towards that decision point. Really excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving to advance the coastal development permit to achieve county and coastal commission approval. We've got a revised, and that's resolved the brine waste disposal issue. And this is an ad hoc committee of R&I, and last month's R&I meeting, we did not have the opportunity to redo the ad hoc committees. The ad hoc committee now are missing a few of the original members. So I will go ahead and reinstate that ad hoc committee so that we could work on this item. On completing the task 1 in-stream flow study, you can see that the date has been revised and it's now the second quarter of 2023 board meeting or earlier. Do you want to make a comment about that one, Mr. D'Anzo? Are we still on track?
At this point, we're still on track.
Okay. The next one down under comments, it shows that the in-stream flow study task 1 information is to be included in the data set to the county. And that date says 2023. And I'm assuming second quarter 2023. And I'm assuming that goes along with the one we just asked you about.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Director Farmer.
Yes, thank you, President Dean. I just wanted to observe or make a comment with regard to the future objective resolving the brine waste disposal issue. And I know so far global water innovations has been discussed, I think at a board meeting and also at R&I. And I'm just curious, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up with our acting general manager sooner, but are we going to be investigating other brine waste disposal options other than just the pilot project that's being offered by Global Water Innovations?
I intended to have the ad hoc committee do that, but Mr. D'Anzo, do you want to respond to that?
I wish I had a comment on that. I don't.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry, Ray, just popped that on you. My
Okay,
apologies.
no, I was going to have the ad hoc committee look at that and other options. So that was the task for the ad hoc committee. Going over to executing phased repairs and upgrades for the wastewater treatment system. I want to explain number 3, which is all in red. I think there was some misunderstanding on what this working group was supposed to be doing. So when we started looking at the COP financing for the wastewater treatment plant, the board assigned an ad hoc committee of myself and former Director Stidel to sit in all of these meetings regarding to the COP financing process, which we did all the way through to the end. But one of the things the board asked us to do once the financing was done was to continue on as an ad hoc committee to help create a historical living document to keep track of the reports that had to be filed through the dissemination agent. And I believe there's an annual report that has to be filed after the audit is done. But then there are other things that might trigger us having to send a report to the securities people, the municipal security, I can't remember what the whole acronym stands for, but the municipal security people. So some of those things could have been, for example, when we changed general managers. It could mean there's some kind of a financial issue that caused us a problem that we need to alert them of. But all we are doing is creating an Excel spreadsheet that will say what triggers a report, who would file the report, when the report was due, just basically a track record to make sure that the reporting is all done when appropriate. So that's what that ad hoc committee is for. And it's a temporary thing. It's just once the document is created and we all know what is supposed to be reported on, then the ad hoc committee is done. So does anybody have any questions on that? I realized the way it was worded under the who was a little bit confusing. Ms. Director Scott.
Yes, Madam President, thank you. So then you would be able to say this was done?
Yeah.
Okay. And so on number 4, where it says quarterly report supplement to the Board of Directors.
Would you like me to explain that one?
Yes, please.
Okay. So one of the things that the board agreed that would happen once we got this financing done is that we would get a quarterly report on the projects that are being done at the wastewater treatment plant. And that would be from the utilities manager, and on the money that's being spent on those projects. And that would be from the finance manager. So that is for the board to receive quarterly reports on those two things from the utilities manager and the finance manager. And they would report first to the standing committees on resources and infrastructure, and to the finance committee, and then to the board.
Report is going to come.
I think once we start getting moving on those projects. Ms. Fritz, did you have a?
The first report will be in the 3rd quarter, so in April.
Okay. So April's the 2nd quarter. You mean the 3rd quarter of the fiscal year? Yeah. Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Dean. Will those quarterly reports, I mean, it's one thing to have individual quarterly reports that let us know what happened in the prior quarter. I'm hoping that as those reports accumulate, we'll have like the first year to date, and then the next year to date, for whatever duration.
The quarter reports are cumulative.
Right.
So it does reflect the cumulative progress throughout the year.
Thank you. Okay. The next one is to revise any district policies or procedures to incorporate findings as appropriate based on learnings from the tracking report. This one I think was supposed to be on the tracking report, which is the item we just looked at. So, and that's to be determined at the future objective. Okay. Going over to fire protection, providing optimal fire protection, water rescue, and emergency medical services on a 24/7 basis. You notice that revised is the update of the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. And we've got that as the second quarter of 2023. The chief is not here, so I'm assuming that's on track. Vice President Gray, you're about to push the button.
I don't want to speak for the chief or anybody, because this is a project that has to be done both together by the healthcare district and the CCSD. So it isn't totally in our controls when it's completed. But again, I'll defer to the chief in a future date for any further comments.
Okay, thank you. The next one has changed a little bit too. We're on target for this one, and this is to report to the board from the ad hoc committee on our evacuation planning. We're still working on this, and we will give you regular quarterly reports on our progress. The last one was report on the progress of implementing the Zone Haven system and the emergency alert system. That was revised to be the second quarter 2023. And since the chief is not here, I can't get an update on that. Okay.
Excuse me, President Dean, Pam Duffield wants to say something.
Sure. Ms. Duffield?
Thank you. So I wanted to respond, please, back to Director Thomas's question about the last topic we were talking about, which is the IGA projects. So I think what your question is to staff was not necessarily a fiscal year cumulative report, but you want a year-over-year report. Is that correct?
Affirmative.
Okay, that was what the intent was. So how I visualize this report would be showing each one of the ECM projects and then what has been spent fiscal year by fiscal year and give you just a total. We'll have the detail like we've talked about before on the expenditure report as those invoices are paid, but the quarterly reporting, you would see what's happened in the fiscal year, but we need to add on the prior fiscal years to that. And that'll have to be a manual report because Tyler budget to actual is generally for a one fiscal year at a time, but we will work on something.
Thank you. Director Scott has a question.
Yes, and not just the financial part of it, but actually what part of the project has been completed as part of the report.
So that you would usually see in the update of the written financials. So on the quarterly report, usually on the last page of the staff report, you would get a recap on what has happened on each project and what the status of that project is. We've been doing that on the report itself. We could also potentially add that language to the CIP list, like a % completed to date or something. So we'll have to work on that. This whole thing will probably become more manually driven because it's going to span more than one fiscal period.
Thank you.
So we'll take that into account as well.
Okay. And I'm sure Mr. D'Enzo with his utilities manager hat will give us updates too on the wastewater treatment plant and the projects being done.
That definitely has to be a discussion, and I like the way Pam phrased it. It's a manual because I could say a little bit, I could say a lot about what we've done on each project. So, but yeah, that's definitely something we could talk through. So when the time comes. So
okay,
and it's going to come soon. So
a member of the public has also asked me if we could put a banner up by the wastewater treatment plant showing what we're working on and what's done.
Okay, I'll take that in consideration.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to managing and providing stewardship of district assets, parks, recreation, open space in a timely, cost-effective, and environmentally sensitive manner. Looking at the second one down, this item has been marked done, and this was identifying and applying for a grant through T-Mobile, and T-Mobile rejected the grant. So that item is done. The last one, let's see, the next one down, facilities and resources and pros present to the board for review and consideration the pros commission's recommended options for East Ranch recreational expansion, and that is now done. They've already presented us with their 3 projects. The next one down is facilities and resources manager working with a board ad hoc committee to define future use and funding for the Vets Hall. And it's been revised to be the second quarter 2023. I think there's an ad hoc committee working on that. And I believe that's Director Farmer and Vice President Gray. Okay. And then we have present options and estimated construction and maintenance costs and possible funding sources for future community park projects to the board, Frisbee golf and exercise circuit, multi-use trail and picnic tables. And looks like they're planning on addressing that at our next strategic planning update, which will be in our 3rd quarter. So we discussed last month and also at the strategic plan workshop, taking the items that are already done off of the chart and making a separate sheet to track them on so that our charts aren't quite as complicated and full of things that were finished in the last between the June strategic planning workshop and the one we just had. So does everybody agree that that would be a good idea? And shall we see if we can ask staff to do that? Okay, Mr. Dienza, would that be possible?
Yes, we could do that. So just so to be clear, you want to keep it in the packet, but just in a separate place. Okay, a
Does that
separate
work?
page.
Okay. Director Scott?
Yes. Could I just make a recommendation?
Sure.
About how that might work? So this box up here, if you would take them into a completed box so that they're right there with the same goals, rather than having another document.
But if they're already done, do you want to look at them every month again?
I just want them down here.
You want them on the same chart?
On the same page, not on the same chart, on the same page.
Okay, but they wouldn't have to be a grid. It could just be a list.
Sure.
Okay. Does that work?
Is that what the board wishes for us to do?
Does that sound all right to everybody else? Makes sense to me
Okay.
too, Director Thomas?
I was just reflecting, there are a few of these where we've been watching them for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and oh my gosh, when we look back at and we often hear the criticism, and we sometimes provide the criticism ourselves about progress. But when we look back on some of these about how much has been done, that list could get a little bit challenging to put on one page. So it sounds good initially. If there's something we want, should we, one or two of us help raise so that we get this right and figure out, not make you come back and say, is this it? Is this it? Help you, yeah.
Okay, let me listen to Vice President Gray, and then I have a suggestion. Okay, Mr. Dienza, would it help if I had a board ad hoc committee work through how this should look first and then bring it back to you?
Yes, that would be helpful.
Okay,
Yes,
and since that was Director Thomas's idea, Director Thomas, would you like to be part of the ad hoc committee?
Put my money where my mouth is.
Okay,
Absolutely.
and I think Director Scott, since she was suggesting it too.
I would love to.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and have an ad hoc committee of Director Thomas and Director Scott to help work out a historical page for this. Okay, one more thing I want to ask about, and then I'll take public comment. Okay, we don't have our mission statement, core values, core areas of services, and the accompanying 3-year goals as a something that's in this report every month. And it would help to have something in there for the public to go back and look at each month to remind them of what our mission statements, core values, and goals are. So can I suggest that we have at the beginning, right before these grids in the packet, that we have a page that lists those things? Does that sound? Okay, so it's in here every month, right there with the strategic plan reports. That sound all right? Is that something we can do, Mr. Danzo?
Yes, we can do that. Yes.
Okay.
That's a great idea. I had suggested that as I was reflecting at SDA, SDLA. One of the instructors was saying that I think this was a legal counsel that supports many boards, and one of the boards, following the Pledge of Allegiance, then they all repeat the mission and vision of the district. I thought, yeah. For example, at my house, I fly the American flag, and right below there is that kind of we believe statement, statement of values. So that's what got me thinking of make sure we are focused. The main thing we do is to deliver the mission of this district for the community. So
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have public comment. Ms. Heinrichs. Sorry, this took so long to get to that point. Oop.
Okay, yes. Well, thank you, President Dean. I'm currently most curious about the progress of the coastal development permit for the EWS SWF WRF. The board may want to scrutinize the progress of the EWS SWF WRF permit application. Does the board want to move this permit application forward? The past 3 years suggest not. That's the effect of the efforts thus far. Mr. Dienzo's update pushes completing the application into the second quarter of 2023 with a revision of the project description. What changes are anticipated to the project description? Is the board considering revising the project description back to the original goal, providing service for existing users only instead of for growth? The update refers to the in-stream flow study data, which is now posted to the district's website, although confusingly labeled draft as of 2/21/22, but the actual document is the final dated January 2023. The public could again be pardoned for being confused. When can the board and the public expect Mr. Yates to give a report in person and explain the findings? Last year, the board hired Merck Associates to complete the biological surveys, which work was to be done by September. Mr. Dienzo acknowledged the importance of that work at the December 12th meeting. 6 months after the deadline, he has not explained why the work is not done or when the board can expect it to be done. The biological reports posted to support the adaptive management plan are the ones that were inadequate, and the reason Merck Associates was hired for $83,000. 2 directors have pressured me to stop asking for answers to why this work has not been done. I asked the board why they accept these delays. It's been 3 years. The acting general manager promised the application would be completed by the end of 2022, and the board has no clear explanation for why it isn't done. Mr. Dienzo was rewarded with a promotion to acting general manager. Observers could reasonably conclude that the board is satisfied with delay rather than progress. That's where it stands now. Thank you.
Thank you. I do believe the CDP application discussion is going to be on the agenda in April. Okay. Okay. Is there any more public comment, Ms. Dodson?
I do not have any public comment.
And I guess there's no one else in the audience to speak. Okay, so we're moving on. Okay, so it's discussion and consideration. So I believe that means we're supposed to vote. Is that correct, Mr. Carmel? On the strategic plan?
If there's been changes since the last time you visited the document that you'd like to include formally, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the changes and updates that we just made
Yeah,
and the recommendations that we just made to staff?
Yes, I so move.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Vice President Gray and seconded by Director Scott. May we have a roll call, please?
Vice President Gray.
Aye.
Director Scott.
Aye.
Director Thomas.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
President Dean.
Aye, that's 5 ayes. It was unanimous. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move to the discussion and consideration to approve the draft policy 1030 Code of Ethics policy, and this is agenda item 5C. Want to go ahead and introduce that, Mr. Danza?
Yes, item 5C is discussion and consideration to approve draft policy 1030 code ethics policy. The policy committee recommends the board of directors review the draft code of ethics policy 1030 and consider adoption of the same.
Okay, thank you. So this is an item that was brought to us from the policy committee, and since Director Farmer is the chair of the policy committee, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yes, well, we did a needs assessment. The policy committee did a needs assessment on the need for a code of ethics policy. And one of our committee members, Mr. Jim Townsend, actually had communication with Mr. Neil McCormick, who is the executive director of the California Special Districts Association, and looked at the CSDA sample handbook, which suggests a code of ethics policy. And Mr. McCormick said it was a best practice to have a code of ethics policy, that the majority of special districts did have one. I personally also want to mention a couple of things. First off, we did have a discussion about this particular item, a code of ethics policy, back in July 14th, the board did. And it lasted about an hour. And I guess you could say there was, it was less than a total agreement on whether in fact we did need a code of ethics policy. My personal feeling is that, considering the history of the district, considering the history of this board, and the questionable concerns, let's put it this way, the concerns that members of the public and even members of the board might have with regard to questionable actions that have or haven't been taken by the district and the board, and certain behaviors, that I think it would be to the advantage of the district for this board to actually approve having a code of ethics policy. I think it would reflect well on us. And also, let me just say that, and I've made this comment to people in the community, I think we can tell that there is this trend moving forward with regard to the district and the board, where there's like a new vibe, a new energy, a new enthusiasm, so to speak. And I think having a code of ethics policy is a statement of moving forward in a very, how could we say it, in not so much a responsible fashion, but in an affirming fashion. This is how we're doing business. I think that it would be very helpful for all concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go, I don't think anybody has their hand up.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do too.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just questions for clarification on this, and then I'll take public comment, and then we'll bring it back for discussion and vote. Okay, so Director Scott?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I did see that there were, well, I only found one change from the sample policy that was made by council, which is on page 33, where it says district board subject to any required due process. That was added, which is great. But were there any other changes?
I went through it and I didn't see any other changes. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Carmel?
There were two more changes.
Oh, I missed them.
They're very minor. In 1030.8B, which reads, I I attune to and care about the needs and issues of district residents, public officials, and district workers. Originally, it said district citizens, which is a legal term. That means you're a recognized subject of a nation. I thought it had a far more expansive meaning as residents, and I assume the board sort of intended it to apply to everyone within that district, not just those that are essentially American citizens. And I made the same change in section 1030.11, where it read, I positively convey the district's care for and commitment to its citizens, and I changed that to residents as well. Those were the only three changes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I want to point out too, that this ethics policy not only applies to the elected and appointed officials, officers, employees, but also to members of advisory committees and volunteers of the district. So this applies to everyone, not just to the board. Okay, Mr. Thomas, Director Thomas, I'm sorry.
Thank you, President Dean. And I wanted to point out as I went through this, well, first, bravo, Policy Committee, for using the CSDA standard document. And I noticed, the committee actually corrected one of the typos in 1030.2B, where we have, the last line, volunteers of the district are herein called officials. That word is missing from the CSDA version, which you might want to feed back. And throughout each of these, as representative of, the word representative is lowercase, except in 1030.8. And just for consistency, to show that we know what we're doing, we should make the spelling consistent on 1030.8 and have representative lowercase, small thing, but small things count.
Okay. Okay, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
I do not, but I do have a written comment to read.
Okay.
The written comment is from Jim Townsend. President Dean and members of the board, I am writing to encourage the board to adopt the draft code of ethics policy contained in agenda item 5C on the March 9, 2023 agenda. The policy committee, of which I am a member, reviewed and considered a number of codes adopted by a wide variety of California special districts. We found the model CSDA code identified as policy 1030 to be clear, comprehensive, and non-threatening to any honest elected or appointed official. I appreciate the board's consideration of this issue and support its adoption. Thank you for your service and the opportunity to provide this comment. Jim Townsend.
Thank you.
And I do have another public comment that just came in.
Okay.
Jeff Wilson would like to speak.
Okay, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Ms. Dodson, and thank you, President Dean and board. I think this is great. My question is somewhat related to prior public comment related to social media and also communications with board members outside the confines of a formal CCSD meeting. So I don't know whether that falls under the ethics code here, but it seems to me there are definitely some ethical ramifications about board communication, board member communications, whether social media or otherwise, with individual or group community. So I guess that's my question. I didn't see it. I may have missed it in this code of ethics, and I don't know if it's the appropriate place, but I sure believe that, that would be good. And honestly, it'll help guide me better in what would be an appropriate communications with board members, as I happen to know several board members. And I want to make sure that I'm not in any way affecting their code of ethics with CCSD. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comment?
I do not.
Okay, Mr. Carmel, may I ask a question, please?
I don't know how to answer that question. We have a social media policy. I'm not sure it would be appropriate in the code of ethics themselves. I mean, certainly you could discuss it and debate it.
Okay, that was my question. We do have a social media policy that we probably should review again. But his other question about the, talking to directors off of social media and out of board meetings, that would be covered under the Brown Act, correct?
That's more or less a Brown Act issue, covered by state law.
Okay, great. That's what I thought. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other public comment, I think that the policy committee did an excellent job on this, and I appreciate all their work. And I like the changes that were made in this as compared to the CSDA one. I agree with Director Thomas's wanting to have the capitalization corrected. So are you ready to make a motion, or did you have a comment?
I move that we adopt this policy as
I
written.
have a comment.
Okay.
Oh,
wait.
apologies.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was a member of the policy committee prior to being elected to the board of directors. And I just really appreciate all of the work that went into this and the discussion and the heartfelt support for this policy. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
There's a further
right.
comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I also appreciate the work that was done on this. Is a very good code of ethics. And I think to pick up on the short discussion, I think Mr. Wilson raised the point, and Ms. Ludwigson's letter also did, about what might be inappropriate social media, use of social media by, say, committee members. That is mostly beyond the scope of this code, but there is a provision I think is very useful. I think it's 1036F, which is I use my titles only, or titles or my designation only when conducting official district business for information purposes or as an indication of background and expertise, carefully considering whether I'm exceeding or appearing to exceed my authority. And I think this is something that people, can be a little bit careful about because of this. If they're on social media, they're talking about, as a member of such and such committee, I think that this might kind of, give people a little bit of pause when they're speaking. Everybody has a right to speak and have the right to their opinion, but there is a little barrier here, which is useful to just claiming to represent something more than you are as an individual. And I also like I think it's fine as a fine document. If you need a motion, I move that we adopt it.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'm happy to second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion for Vice President Gray and a second from Director Thomas. Can we have a roll call, please?
Vice President Gray.
Aye.
Director Thomas.
Enthusiastically, aye.
Director Scott.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
President Dean.
Aye, and thank you, Director Farmer, for all your committee's work on this. Much appreciated. Good job.
Thank you. Yes, thanks. You can thank our very eccentric committee for a job well done. Thank you.
Just to double check, did we word that motion correctly to make sure that it included the change?
I just made a note that Michael Thomas made changes to 1030.8, and I'll have to listen to the recording to verify what those were.
I can redo the motion if you want.
Yeah, let's redo the motion so it includes the change that Mr. Director Thomas made, just to make sure it's legal.
Yeah, I move that, I'll do it a little more formally here. I move that the board approve draft policy 1030, Code of Ethics policy, including the changes that were made or proposed by Director Thomas during this meeting.
I think that works. Okay, do you want to go ahead and second again, Director Thomas?
I second.
Okay, let's do the vote again. I just want to make sure we covered it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Vice President Gray.
Aye.
Director Thomas.
Aye.
Director Scott.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
President Dean.
Aye. Okay, moving on to board member, committee, and liaison reports. Starting with the Finance Committee report, we do have a written report in the agenda packet. Does anybody on the board have any questions about this report? Questions or comments? And do you have anything further to add to your report, Vice President Gray?
No, actually, I think this pretty much covers it.
Okay, did anybody on the board have any questions of Vice President Gray on his report? I'm sorry, Director Farmer.
No, I don't have a question of Vice President Gray. I just want to commend him for how rapidly he submitted this to Haley so it could actually be in this agenda, since the meeting was like, what, last Friday?
That was Tuesday,
Excuse me,
the
Tuesday, but it had to
24th.
be, but it had to be submitted like the next day
Next day.
for Haley to have it.
Yeah.
And you did that. And so I just
I-
want to acknowledge that.
I'll make a confession. I got a little extension until the end of the day. So,
Still,
Okay, moving on to the policy committee report. We have the written report in the agenda packet. You know what? I didn't take public comment. Was there any public comment on the finance report?
No.
Okay, sorry. Moving on to the policy committee report, and there's a written report in the agenda packet. Does anybody on the board have any questions about Director Farmer's policy committee report? Director Thomas.
I just wanted to ask paragraph near the bottom of the first page where initially it was pointed out, and towards the end, approved the revision of the standing committee bylaws, and have Chair Farmer forward the approved revision to the board ad hoc committee on policy and bylaw modifications. And Director Gray and I are working on that. We haven't seen that. So if there's something we should be looking at, it sounds like timely for Director Gray and I to see those ideas.
Okay, Mr. Carmel, can the policy committee directly give their recommendations to the ad hoc committee, or does it have to come before the board first?
I think they can give them to the committee.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can we keep it simple?
Yeah.
And by the way, KISS means keep it short and simple, as opposed to how some phrase that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, do we have any public comment on the policy committee report?
I do not.
Okay. Resources and Infrastructure Committee report. My report is in the agenda packet. Does anybody on the board have any questions on my R&I report? Seeing none. Do any members of the public have a question or a comment?
I do not.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to other liaison reports and ad hoc committee reports. And we have several ad hoc committee and liaison reports in here that are in writing. Does anyone have any questions on any of these reports? We have the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve report. We have the NCAC liaison report. Oh, I missed the San Simeon. We have San Simeon Community Services District liaison report, the NCAC liaison report, the Cambria Forest Committee liaison report. So there's a lot of reports in here. I'm assuming you've all read. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, do we have any public comment on any of these reports?
I do not.
Okay, great. So we're ready for future agenda items. I would like to make a future agenda item to bring forward a discussion of having possibly having the policy committee review the social media policy and possibly a code of conduct and behavioral norms for the board and for the standing committees to perhaps do a needs assessment for those. Vice President Gray.
Is I can see the social media part, but is the code of ethics include, I have to be careful not to duplicate the code of ethics. A lot of the code of ethics is a code of conduct and behavioral norms. Actually.
Okay.
So maybe the social media thing separate might be tidier.
Okay. I was looking at Templeton's policy, and they do have a separate code of conduct and behavioral norms policy. So that's where I got that thought. So perhaps we can have them look at Templeton's policies and see if they feel they need
If it's-
to bring us a recommendation.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda.
Yeah.
Are there any other future agenda items? Director Thomas?
Well, I just wanted to comment that I see your explanation of code of conduct and behavioral norms distinct and separate from ethics, more operational level. And it just strikes me as a good idea.
Okay. Anybody else have a future agenda item? Director Farmer?
Well, I just want to say that in the past, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but in the past, some folks have suggested that maybe there wasn't even a need for a policy committee. So I can see that apparently there is, at least in the foreseeable future. So thank you.
We're going to keep you busy. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, if there is no objections, we can go ahead and adjourn, and we got done by 3 o'clock. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.